Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Schenker-Passero. I am the Associate Director at the Temple Small Business Development Center. We help small businesses start and grow. And these days in quarantine, we are doing everything virtually. So we have consultants who are able to meet with you over the phone or over Zoom to talk about your business. We are also doing virtual training events like this one. We are also keeping up to date on all of the resources available for small businesses. So I'll include the resource page that we update daily, which includes helpful links on the federal level, the local level. It also includes our upcoming webinars as well as recordings of previous webinars. If you have any questions about the SBDC, you can feel free to reach out to me. My email is bdc@temple.edu. For today's event, we have everybody muted. We're going to ask that if you have some specific questions in the Q&A, and then we can address them. I think that's probably the way we want to do it, depending how it's going. Maybe we can do some unmuting to get to know everyone here. So for today, you are joining us for the Science of Networking. Originally, we had planned this event to be an in-person event. We planned this a while back, and networking was what we know networking to be, and now it is a bit different. So today we're going to be talking about the things that still hold true and some of the changes that we all need to think about, because networking is still important and maintaining your network is still important. So today we are joined by Rick Tashman, who is a leader in the field of enterprise technology crisis recovery. He is one of just a handful of IT consultants. And you know, my husband's name is Rick and is in IT. I don't think I mentioned that to you.
That's a little weird, yes.
He is just a handful of IT consultants in the country providing extreme makeovers for data centers and critical infrastructures. He's helped organizations such as Duane Morris, Siemens, Xerox, Homeland Security, Tastykake, and Morton. Clients have described Rick as the guy who solves the toughest IT challenges. He's conducted over 500 workshops and has founded several entrepreneurial and community groups that are comprised of over 3,800 members. Rick is well known for founding the Philadelphia Career Connection and for helping professionals in career transition to land their ideal jobs. He is a certified spinning instructor who has completed 7 marathons, 5 triathlons, and has ridden his bicycle more than 8,000 miles for various charities. Recently he completed, I don't know how to pronounce that ride, but a 428, which is unfathomable to me, bicycle ride across the state of Iowa. Impressive stuff, and we are so happy to have you today to lead this conversation. Wanted to let everyone know we will send out a copy of the presentation afterwards. I know that's always a question, and we have a hard stop at 1, so please get those questions in that Q&A box as we go. Does that sound good, Rick?
Sounds great. Jamie, thank you very much for the wonderful intro. Delighted to be here today. Let's get started. So today, as Jamie said, we're going to talk about the what, how, and why of networking. A couple guidelines for the workshop today. I'd like you to pretend that you're happy and listen enthusiastically. Take notes. At the end, I'm going to ask each of you to send in a takeaway. Listen actively with the intent that you will hear 1 or 2 things that can make a difference in your life, in networking or in business. It might be something that another attendee asks, or it might be something Jamie says, or something that I share. A couple other things, please take notes, have fun. Be open to new ideas. Some of the stuff I'm going to share with you, I know you may know, and some of it might be a new idea. Also, some of the ideas I'm going to share with you, you might think are crazy and you might not like. Some you might think are brilliant. So I find that when I'm at workshops, if someone says something good, I lean in, I listen, I take notes. If they say something strange, I start to fold my arms and then stop listening. Please be kind and forgiving. If I share something with you that you're not crazy about, it's okay. Maybe the next thing I share might be worth acting on. All right, so let's get going here. 75%, what does this 75% mean? In today's world, even today, 75% of all jobs, projects, opportunities, contracts, deals happen from people that know people who know people. It's through networking. It's not just by responding to an ad, responding to a job listing on Monster, or filling out a bid proposal. Most of our business and relationships occur as a result of networking. Businesses do not hire people. Businesses do not buy products. It's people buying from people. So let's remember that. Let's go to the next slide. Today, more than ever, John Nesbitt said something many, many years ago. He wrote the book In Search of Excellence. In his book, he talked about this concept called high technology. High tech stuff requires high touch. Today, people are starving for relationships. You know, with all the stuff in terms of social distancing, people miss that human contact. Can we have that on Zoom? It's yes, we can. It's different, but we can have it today. Having a conversation on a phone or texting is one thing, but when you connect with people on Zoom or GoToMeeting or WebExes, there is an extra element of feeling, and feelings are important. All right, so the new norm, the new rules, let's talk about that. We're going to share with you both. As Jamie said, some of the established guidelines, rules, philosophies still apply. And then there's new stuff. So we have a mixture. We're going to go back and forth between new and traditional. And frankly, they both truly are important. So let's continue on that with the understanding. Some of it's we're not going to talk about firm handshakes. I took that slide out of the deck completely. No handshakes today.
I feel like it's going to be a really long time before people do that again. Like
yeah, really. I've decided maybe a virtual elbow bump at a distance. All right, so we have a bunch of different tools out there. Google now has had, continues to have. We have Facebook, Cisco, WebExes, Zooms, and GoToMeetings. Some people have said to me that they're not comfortable doing Zoom calls. They'd rather just talk on the phone. They're just not comfortable with it. So let's talk about, you know, it's hard to see everyone in the room, but by a show of hands, how many of you are slightly uncomfortable either, you know, doing these Zoom calls with people, or don't feel you're as effective as you could be, that you have the potential to be greater? Raise your hand. Okay, great.
And there's a button where you can do that if you haven't caught on.
All right.
You caught on to that.
Okay, talking to strangers. We were taught as kids not to talk to strangers. So today, I'm going to break the rules and say it's okay to talk to strangers. You're all adults here. It's okay to talk to some strangers. I'm not saying, you know, you got to be, we still need to practice social distancing and being careful, but talking to strangers is a wonderful opportunity to create additional opportunities in your life, as well as practice. And we'll talk about the importance of practice. And if you're uncomfortable doing something, the Navy SEALs have a great expression. I call this my mantra. How many of you, when you're thinking about dinner or in a restaurant, some of you might remember going to a restaurant, that was a place where people would eat together, but you're looking at a menu and you're thinking to yourself, should I order the salad or should I go with the guacamole? Yeah, you have that inner voice. So if I'm thinking about doing something, quite often I'll say, should I do this or shouldn't I? I'm not comfortable. I take that as a sign from the universe. I'm going to get a little spiritual here, but I'll say, go for it. The Navy SEALs say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Embrace that. When you get that sign, it means it's probably something important and you should be doing it. My grandmother used to say to me, Ricky, it's not what you do in life that you regret, it's what you don't do. So think about that as we go through this. If you're a little uncomfortable with networking or talking to strangers or doing some of the things we talk about, try it and do it anyway. All right, practice, 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 and create your own opportunities. Some of these Zoom calls, some of these WebExes, some of these networking events that are out there are awesome. And some are not so awesome. I remember going to one of my very first networking events years ago, and the organizer of the networking event did not show up. I was like, thinking, this is crazy. This is terrible. I felt embarrassed, annoyed. How am I going to get home and say nobody showed up except me? I felt this is ridiculous. I was angry. So what did I do? The next week, I started my own networking group. And of course, I did show up. And by creating my own group, I created my own rules. I had invited people. It was amazing for me. Friends and Friends of Rick, essentially, was my group. But we created mastermind groups and various networking groups. So you have the opportunity with Zoom calls to create your own mini groups. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. I was on a call earlier today with someone who was not comfortable doing Zoom calls, so we did it anyway, and he got more comfortable with it. And the beauty of that is he will be asked to do calls with clients and other people, and the more you practice, the more you become comfortable.
Yeah, Rick, and I'm just going to add that small business owners, entrepreneurs, I mean, you kind of don't have an excuse. You have to be the face, the voice of your business. It is really hard to be a shy business owner because you are the one who has to speak for your whole business. And then if you are shy, find a book, find podcasts to work on that side of you, to just pretend okay. That you're not. Maybe you can't change whether you're shy or not shy inside, but you can fake it.
Okay. And tying in with that, I was the kid who would cut school. Don't tell my mother this, but I would take off from school when we had to do book reports, when we would have to present in front of the class. So I look for opportunities to practice talking to strangers so I become more comfortable and I then get better at it. This is an example. The gentleman on the right is Curtis. This is in my office in Ardmore. I gave him a $2 bill. I carry $2 bills with me to give as a tip, because it creates a different experience. A lot of people will say, oh my God, I haven't seen one in a while, or my uncle used to give me one. You see the smile on his face. He was holding it up. He was very excited. And we got to chat about that. So when I go in there, Curtis remembers me. So when I get good service in a restaurant, I'll ask the manager, and they think I'm complaining, but I'll compliment them. That's an example of, again, practicing being uncomfortable to the point that you get relaxed with it. I also wrote on this slide, volunteerism. Volunteerism is a great way to practice public speaking, working with groups of people. Years ago, I did a charity bicycle ride, and I was very good at raising the money, which I didn't realize I'd be good at. So they asked me to share with other people how I did it. I ended up developing a workshop on the art of fundraising. And by doing that, I've done lots of fundraising workshops, and it gets me more relaxed. So when I meet with engineers in my technical career, I'm more relaxed having a meeting around a round table with engineers because I've done other workshops in other areas. Does that make sense? Shake your head, everybody. Yes. Yep. Voicemail. How many people ever call somebody on the phone? Jamie, since I can see you on the screen, have you ever called somebody on the phone and got voicemail?
Yeah.
Of course. So what do you do when you get voicemail? Some people will leave a message. Some people will hang up. In today's world, it's okay to hang up. People that you know will know to call you back. But if you leave a message, here's one of my practice. This might sound silly, but I call it the 1, 2, 3. I'll leave a message, and then I'll listen at the end. It says, press 1 to send, typically. Now, the rules change on different voicemail systems, but most of them, 2 lets you listen, and 3 lets you delete. So I will press 2 to hear myself. And when I do, I say, oh my gosh. I say, and or my phone, my headset was noisy. Can you hear me okay, Jamie? My headset okay? I was on a call earlier with a different headset that sounded crummy. This is a much better headset. So I'll listen to my voice message and I'll say, you know what? I was rambling. I didn't sound as sharp as I should. I'll delete it and redo it. So it's an opportunity to practice in a non-threatening way. Isn't that a great idea? So yes. All right. Now, you're going to a networking event. You're thinking about going to a Zoom networking event, or someday we may have group meetings at 6 feet apart. We're talking about meeting people. It's good to have a pre-notion of what do you expect to happen. Do you expect that when you go to a networking event that someone's going to be standing up with a sign saying that they have a big project for you, they're ready to hire your company? That would be awesome, but let's be real. That's not very realistic, but it could happen, but not the best goal to have. So when you go to these things, I've heard people say, oh, I went to this networking event, it was terrible. There were a bunch of blah, blah people there. There were no people that could buy my product. And I think to myself, what lunatic. It's not who you meet at a networking event or who you meet on these calls, it's who they know. For instance, some of you may have noticed when Jamie was introducing me, she has a husband whose first name is the same as mine, who's involved in IT. Now, I did not know that before, but I'm a good listener. So I am going to ask Jamie at some point about that. Now, Jamie and I have talked before. I know other things I'm not going to share on this call, but in terms of developing a relationship, if I immediately jumped and said, oh, Jamie, could you introduce me? Jamie doesn't know me that well that she feels comfortable introducing me to her husband yet, but maybe after this call, she'll see how, awesome I'm not humble, but does that make sense, everybody? So don't ask Jamie to introduce you day one, but after you get to know her a little bit, or if I do a couple other things that demonstrate that I show up on time, I'm responsible, there's ways to be more referable. Does that make sense? So it's not who you meet, it's who they know that's really special. I wrote down here the ideal. What does that mean? Some people say they're looking for blah, blah, blah in a meeting, or this is what their perfect client looks like. I am a big believer in the law of attraction. I am a scientific kind of person. I used to teach and tutor calculus. I'm in technology, but I also believe the more clear we are on what we're looking for, we're more likely to find it. So I have a list of what my ideal client, my ideal customer looks like. And by having this, am I more apt to find it? Yes. It's called reticular vision. Has anyone here ever bought a new car? When I bought my new Volvo a few years ago, all of a sudden I saw hundreds of Volvos every week all over the place. Now they probably were the same amount of Volvos, but my vision, I was more likely to notice them because I personally owned one. Same
Yeah.
thing in your business. You've had that happen, Jamie? Okay,
Yes,
good.
we got new windows a year ago. I had never looked at windows when I was walking down the street. And all of a sudden I was paying attention to all of the windows. I was like, oh, I recognize that. Oh,
Yeah,
that's the prairie. Yep.
yeah, exactly. All right. So having an ideal client profile or an ideal strategic relationship, write this down. Having ideal strategic relationships. Right before this call, I was on the phone with a cabling company. Cabling companies are like electricians that do the wiring for hotspots, Wi-Fi, voice over technology, low voltage. This one guy has introduced me to 5 or 6 different business projects. I've brought him into over $500,000 of projects also. So we refer each other. We were at one point strangers. We met on a job project and stayed in touch. Oprah, most people have heard of Oprah. She doesn't even need a last name. Number of contacts, how important it is when you go to networking events. Some people go there like it's a game and they try to collect business cards. How many cards should you connect with or collect? How many people should you connect with? What's really important? It's meaningful connections that really matter, is what Oprah says. Having 5,000 people in your Facebook page or 5,000 people on LinkedIn, yeah, it sounds good, but really and truly, that's superficial. What would really be awesome, how many of you can say that you have 5 or 10 good friends that watch your back, or business associates that truly know where, they, for instance, might know the name of your spouse, they might know your birthday, they might know your favorite food, that they really know you and care about you? Wouldn't that be awesome? Do you have 10 or 20 people like that? Most people don't. So my challenge to you is, don't worry about 1,000. Get 10 or 20 people that you care about, that you're a good friend to them, and they hopefully will reciprocate and be a good friend to you. Be a go-giver. I look for opportunities. You might want to write this down. This is one of my favorites with networking. I call it random acts of kindness on purpose. Be on purpose. Look and listen for opportunities to be kind and helpful. One of the reasons I run the Philadelphia Career Connections, is nonprofit, helps people get jobs. It's good getting somebody a job. If you help somebody find a job, that's huge in their life. and it feels good. A friend of mine says that feeling good and having fun is underrated. It's really important to have fun and to feel good. You sleep better, you have more energy, more enthusiasm, and it's attractive to clients. Overall, good karma, lots of good stuff. So take Oprah's advice. Don't worry about thousands. Get 20 to 50 good people that you stay in touch with. All right. First impressions really do matter. Should people judge people by the way they look or sound or act? Probably they shouldn't. I've taken courses in having unconscious biases that we do discriminate. We do look at people and make stereotypical things. We shouldn't do it, but we do, and other people do. Is enthusiasm good? Yes. If you have too much enthusiasm, like if I wave both hands too much, you get distracted with my hands. You'll notice I use my hands a lot. I'm trying to use just one hand. I hold the other hand on the mouse. But too much enthusiasm can be a bit crazy and distracting. But generally, a smile is considered good in our society. Eye contact's good. Now, if you don't blink, people will think you're crazy. Yeah, you can have too much eye contact. That's a little too weird. Smile and breathe is good. Breathing is important. Standing up straight and breathing, I find, makes a difference. When I stand up, do you ever notice I just stood up and I'm more effective? People are more responsive to me when I take a deep breath and stand up straight. Be in the moment. Quite often, have you ever talked to someone who is looking at their watch all the time or checking their email? That does not help establish good relationships, does it? No. So be in the moment. It's hard. It's different to really listen than just hear. And we're going to talk about nervousness in a moment. How many of you, you can raise your hand electronically, are sometimes a little nervous speaking to a group of people or standing up at a group and introducing themselves or meeting people or in a presentation? Is it, okay, a few of you have raised your hand. Thank you. Now, is it good or bad to be nervous? It can be both. If you're so nervous that you're sweating, or so nervous that you're not showing up to meetings or showing up to work or doing things you should be doing, that's bad. You don't want it to stop you. But if you do have a little nervousness inside you, that's awesome. Embrace the nervousness. Jay Leno and Johnny Carson both said that when they go out on stage, and they've been on TV a lot, they get a little nervous and they embrace that. That's their showtime. They're there to, and it gives their body a message that this is important. Okay. If you've ever met someone who's not nervous or they're so casually relaxed, you start to think they don't care. And caring is a big deal in business relationships. And I work with some defense contractors. I work with some serious businesses. I found that by being polite and kind, clients do appreciate that. It does make a difference. They know I care about them. That is an important part of it. So embrace the nervousness, but let's talk about, again, how can we get over it? All right. Now, this is one of those old slides I promised you I would show. Dress code. Today, the dress code is from the top up, okay? Most of you might be, not dressing, it's half dressing, I guess is the term. But if you're not sure how to dress for an event, dress up a little bit versus down, okay? Or look at last year's pictures of the event to see if there was an event last year to get an idea. You could ask people. Practice and role play. So many people go to networking events and they'll stand up and they'll say, oh, I just created my new intro. I'm going to test it out today amongst you guys. That's insane. So practice your role play of what you're going to say. Like if you bump into someone at a networking event, how do you introduce yourself? What do you say? Now, how do you practice this? Can you have a workout partner? Can you find another business owner that you can do practices with? The answer is, of course you can. Use technology. Google people ahead of time. Before you go to an event, you can sometimes see who's going to be attending, or at least who's running it. How many of you Googled me or Jamie ahead of time to see our backgrounds? Okay, that's a big deal. The more you know ahead of time, the more prepared you are, and it makes a difference in terms of how people feel. It's all about feelings. And then, of course, setting goals, having some objectives. Couple more pre-event things. If you're going to an event in person, now this may sound silly, or if let's say you're going out to lunch with someone, this is one of the things I heard, and I thought this was really crazy, but I love food. Food is one of my favorite hobbies. I eat food every single day, at least 3 times a day or more. When I'm eating breakfast, I'm sometimes thinking about lunch. I am obsessed with food. I work out, I ride my bike thousands of miles a year, teach spinning so I can eat. But before I go to a networking event or before I go out to lunch with someone, I'll eat something. Why? So I'm not obsessed with the food. I used to go and I would be studying the menu when I'm sitting there with somebody and I'm obsessed with the food. And it's not about the food, it's about the relationship.
That's a really good one.
Isn't that great?
I can relate, yeah.
Now, don't eat so little that you don't eat anything. You make the
Right.
other person feel uncomfortable. Arriving early is huge. Now, I will arrive early at meetings with clients. I'll arrive early at conferences. I will arrive so early that I am sometimes there before the organizer. So what do? I sit at the table where the where the people come in and they think I'm the organizer. They'll hand me their card. They'll ask me questions. It's a great way to bond with people in an interesting way. Where not to sit. I do multitask, but to sit in the back or in the middle, you're more likely to read email, you're not as connected. I will sit on the very first row. It's uncomfortable, it's a little weird, but I'm that groupie. I'm that person sitting on the first row, listening to the person speaking, shaking my head, paying attention. And I found afterwards, the people speaking really appreciate that. I've connected with the speakers, and quite often, the speaker is one of the best people to meet at events. Avoid alcohol. If you think alcohol will help you relax, you're crazy. It makes you sometimes look a little not as smart. And in terms of people stereotyping people, being smart and is a good thing. Having alcohol in your breath is not necessarily a great thing. So be careful about that. And then
you can hold a beer for quite a long time, though.
That is true.
And sometimes it can help spark a conversation.
That is true. And we can talk about beer. For instance, Yingling has a great factory tour that is amazing. And having tidbits like that to break the ice with can be a good thing. All right, having a wingman or a wing person. Anybody recognize the person on the right? This is a sort of an older slide. He's singing the song, "You've Lost That Loving Feeling." That's Tom Cruise. So when you go to a networking event, should you go by yourself or should you go with someone else? I personally have found that there are times where I schedule myself to go to an event and I cancel last minute because I'm busy, other stuff's going on. How good is it going to be? I have that little inner voice second guessing myself. But if I invite someone to go with me, I am much more likely to go because they are going as well. That's a big deal, okay? So please invite someone to go with you. And this can be someone that you really don't know that well, but do not sit next to them. Do not hang out with them. Make a rule that you're all both are going to meet people. And if they meet, tell them what your ideal profile of a strategic alliance partner looks like. They can be on the lookout for them. I was in a networking event a few months ago, and one of the ladies I went with, she found this very geeky guy who just did a paper, a master's thesis on a project that I was working on for a client. And he gave me a copy of this. It was just one of those magical moments that because she met him, I would not have connected. Does that make sense? So it's an extra set of eyes.
You double your potential.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. Now, you're at a networking event. There's a tendency, we talked earlier about talking with people. It's more important to listen than to throw up on people. So do not be that person that goes blah, 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 blah. When I get nervous, I speak more, I talk more, I talk a little fast. So be conscious of being a good listener. Don't be that guy that, who should go first? You meet someone at an event, or you're talking to them on a Zoom call, you've scheduled a follow-up discussion. There's a tendency, we have this rule, we call this the John Creighton Go Dutch rule. If we're going out for coffee or beer, it's 20 minutes about you, 20 minutes about me, and we split the bill. So we say that up front, we establish that. But if you're meeting someone at a networking event, it's very common to say, hi, Jamie, how are you, blah, blah, blah. And you start to talk about who you are, what you do, blah, blah. What I found is the magic comes into play is if I start asking questions to Jamie, she may ask me the same questions back. So I'll say to Jamie, hi, Jamie, how you doing? What motivated you? Rather than just saying, who are you? What do you do? I want to be sort of top of mind memorable. I don't want to be boring and, but I don't want to be strange either. So rather than just saying, who are you? What do you do? Oh, okay. It gets monotonous. So I will ask, what motivated you to come here today? What motivated you about the speaker? Or how long have you been involved in the group? It gives the person an opportunity to talk more so than just blah, blah, blah. Some possible questions. We talked about what motivated you to attend today. What do you do professionally? Yeah, of course you can ask that. How did you get started in this? And say it with some energy, enthusiasm, like if they're in an interesting field. What made you get started in that? How did you decide on that? And people love to tell their story. Don't interrupt them. Continue. Ask them things like, what are you most proud of? Some people will ask the question, and I do this even with friends. Did anyone ever ask you, hi, how are you today? And you say back, fine, thank you. And how are you? Or what's new? It's like, it's not the best conversation starter. But if I said to you, Jamie, hey, what was one of the best things that's happened to you in the past week or so? Or what are some of the highlights of your week coming up? It gives you an opportunity to think for a moment and reflect on something good. And it creates a different level of communication. Okay? All right, this is my favorite question. And this is special. You can't ask this in the very first moment of discussing things with somebody on SEPTA or on when you meet them at a networking event. But once you've established some rapport, I like to say, what do you like to do other than work? Which is different than saying, what is your hobby? If somebody says to me, Rick, what's your hobby? I might say, well, I play guitar, or I like to work on my car, do woodwork. It's just not, I like to travel. But if somebody says, what do you like to do other than work? I can tell them about how I like to run workshops, or I love to teach spinning. You might not consider spinning a hobby. That's, because I work at it. It's a real job. So everybody got that? What do you like to do other than work? Great question to ask. Now, anybody recognize these people? I hear silence. Am I still connected? Jamie, does anybody texting in recognize who these people are? Does anybody know?
Someone's raising their hand.
Okay. All right. Who are they? All right. This is from the movie Beauty and the Beast. The Beast is on the left, and that's Belle on the right. Now, Belle at some point fell in love with the Beast. Does anybody know what caused her to fall in love with the Beast?
His library.
His library, his passion for books. Belle grew up in a time and place where they discouraged women from going to school, from reading books. She almost had to hide the fact that she loved books. So they both had this magical connection of love of books, which caused their relationship to grow much deeper. So when you meet people, everyone has a story. Everybody has a passion. There is a common denominator. There is some area that you may discover, and it may not happen in the first few seconds that you meet someone. But if you can discover what that is, it can create real magic in the relationships. And isn't that what life's about? How many of you want lots of meaningless, superficial relationships with people and clients? That would be awful. But to have clients that love you, that you have a mutual connection of some sort and you discover it, that's the magic. And that's hopefully what you can discover by some of the things that we're going to continue to talk about, okay? Being Terry Gross. Does anybody know who Terry Gross is? A few of you shake your heads. Okay, Terry Gross is one of the most famous uh, Salima knows who Terry. Thank you for raising your hand there. Terry, I've met her a few times. Terry, I actually saw her speak at the Keswick Theater, and I had the opportunity to ask her a question. I'll tell you about that in a second. But Terry Gross works for WHYY. She interviews thousands of people. She's famous for interviewing some of the most famous people in the world. And people generally come away saying that they had an amazing experience and interview with her. They loved her interview. So she is not superficial. She does a lot of research before interviewing people. That's pretty standard. But she also will ask people things that most people wouldn't ask. So I asked Terry, I said, Terry, I'm not a professional interviewer, but I meet people all the time, and I'm sort of interviewing. Don't we all interview people when we meet them, sort of? And we do. So I asked her what advice she would give me. And she said to me, Rick, the advice I would give you is ask permission to ask questions so you don't seem weird asking really, personal questions, and give people permission not to answer. So what she said was, she'll say to someone, Jamie, I'm going to ask you, as we talk today, I may ask you a few questions. Now, if I ask you something that's too personal, that's a little bit, you're uncomfortable answering, it's okay. You don't have to answer. Is that okay? Do you see what I did? I asked permission to ask questions, some of which might be a little bit personal, but if you don't want to answer, it's okay. Don't be offended. Now, you can't say that to somebody on your very first second you meet someone. But if you're curious, if you're talking with someone and they say something, you say, do you mind if I ask you something? And you can whisper it and just be polite. Be kind, be polite, but let's not be superficial. Sometimes if somebody shares something partially and you hear it by listening carefully, that extra little something is what makes a difference in that relationship, okay? Jeopardy. There's two parts to this. My favorite one is I used to be amazingly fast at filling in sentences for people. So if I'm talking with someone and they were saying something, I would interrupt them and finish their sentence. Not a good thing to do in relationship building. So do not do that. And so my analogy is on Jeopardy, you know how they hit the buzzer fast? Don't do that in conversations. If someone's talking or they ask you something, don't hit the buzzer and interrupt them. Let them finish. Be polite. It makes a huge difference in terms of relationships. The part of Jeopardy that I love is when Alex in the beginning says to the panelists, tell us something interesting about yourself. Like, for instance, Jeffrey out there in the audience, I understand that you can raise bees, that you have 200,000 beehives in your backyard. How did you get started with this? Tell the audience about that. So think about something. If you were on Jeopardy, what would you share? So quite often when I meet people, I'll ask, or if we go out to dinner with a group of people, I'll ask them to go around the room and share a Jeopardy moment of something that they would say that they did. Like, all right. Continuing. GPS. We all know what a GPS is, right? Well, a local individual wrote a book about business relationships that matter. And in his book, he talks about GPS. This is a way to remember you're having a conversation with someone. What do you talk about? So this is a little bit strange, but I like it. It's goals, passions, and stresses. Now, again, you can't say this on your first 30 seconds that you meet someone. It's a little too weird. But as you're developing a relationship with a client, a friend, a networking buddy, this is a good thing to remember. Goals, passions, and stresses. Again, what are the things they're stressing about? What are they passionate about? And what are some of their goals? Harvey Mackay, 66. Does anybody know? Raise your hand. Has anyone ever heard of Harvey Mackay? He's the guy who wrote the book, What They Don't Teach You in the Harvard Business School. Great, great book. And in his book, Harvey Mackay runs a business that sells envelopes. Very exciting technology business. Envelopes. Who cares about envelopes? But his salespeople they're one of the most successful business is in the world in envelopes. And he has this concept of knowing 66 things about people. And if you Google this, you can get the list. For instance, let's say I'm starting a relationship with an IT professional who works at Johnson & Johnson. I Google the person, I learn a little bit. As we're talking further, I discover that his son is on the football team in high school and is going to Penn State. So a few weeks from now, I see an article about Penn State's football program. I can take a picture of it, text him the article that I just saw, and it shows a connection. It shows that I listen. It shows that I care. Now, if you ask all 66 questions on your very first meeting with this person from J&J, they're going to think you're a spy or you're weird. So you do this gradually, and he suggests, building this over time. Okay? Having fun, we talked about this earlier, is underrated. Anybody watch the Shark Tank? Do you ever see that show? A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to be not on the Shark Tank show, but there was a counterfeit version of it. Uber, you all heard of Uber, did a combination Shark Tank and Uber program where they got wealthy investors together, and they did this in major cities around the United States with Uber XLs. And you could enter a contest to present your business plan or idea to an investor in an Uber XL for 10 minutes. So you could win $10,000 as well. So I entered the contest. Unfortunately, well, not fortunately, I got selected. I got to play. I didn't get the $10,000, but I did get to have fun, and I did get to exercise what Amy Cuddy is doing here. This is a TED Talk that talks about the power of enthusiasm and energy, about how we act affects how we feel affects how we act. And I would like to ask all of you to watch this TED Talk and send me a text or note how it affected you. But for me, it's been a magical experience. I do this before important meetings. I'll go 3, 2, 1, yes! As if I just finished a race, a marathon race, and I have more energy, enthusiasm, and less stress. But it doesn't guarantee you'll win the $10,000 in the Shark Tank. Another thing that I do that I feel is helpful, do you see the picture on the left? Those are, anybody recognize those? They are Rick's sneakers. They're Chuck Taylors, and I got them for free at a conference. Do you ever go to a workshop where they say, would somebody volunteer and come up on stage? So I was the person who ran up on stage. And the speaker gave me these. Lonnie Main wrote a book about red shoes living. His father was a professional wrestler, which is a interesting background and very theatrical. But what he talked about, and this is a great book, by the way, and when you meet people, being aware, listening, awareness, looking around, when you're networking on Zoom, you're on a conference call, you're in person, being aware of what's going on, staying present in the moment, very, very important. Gratitude, being happy, thankful for what you got. Listen to what people's story is. Everybody has a story. Quite often we're rushing through things. Listen carefully for what their story is, how they got where they are, what they're doing. It's a great way of developing a business relationship and networking. Be respectful and kind. This is something very special. One of the ladies in my cycling class has a very nice expression. She says, whenever possible, be kind. And it's always possible. Isn't that great? And then put yourself out there. If you think, should you say something or do something, I look for opportunities every day to give compliments, to ask questions. Special. Look for those opportunities to do something special, to be memorable. Don't just be normal. All right. Now, we're talking about networking. We're talking about quite often people will do things like ask for referrals. They'll do things. Has anyone seen this movie, Pay It Forward? It's an old movie. If you've not seen it, I will offer you a money-back guarantee to rent it on Netflix or whatever. It is absolutely worth seeing. And basically what it talks about is how we can change the world in our own space by doing kind deeds up front, not to trade, not to barter, but just being. I believe in that. I also believe there's a universal law called karma, that by doing this, good stuff happens as well, but that's not the reason to do it. Do it because it's the right thing to do. So when you have an opportunity and you go to a networking event, go with the intention of who you can help as opposed to who can help you. Be a go-giver. If you go with that intention of how many people can you help today, how many people can you be awesome with, that will make a difference in your world. Not necessarily in 5 minutes, but what goes around comes around. We all know that. The more people you help, the more you build your brand, the better you feel, the better energy you have, the more enthusiasm you have, and it just works. So try it as an experiment. If you don't believe me, let me know how it works for you, okay? Disengaging. Now, this is a little bit weird. You're at a networking event. Has anyone ever been to one where the person you're talking with is really boring and you say, oh my God, how can I gracefully say I have to go to the bathroom, or I'm going to go grab some food, and they follow you. I'm going to go get a beer and they follow. You're like, what do I do? This is really bad. So you can look them in the eyes and say, it was truly a pleasure meeting you today. That's a polite way of starting, saying, but I find you very boring and I need to leave. You can't say that, but don't say that. But you got to say something. So what you can say is, this is my favorite. Ready? Who did you meet today that you think that would be good for me to meet? And did you see anyone here in the room that you would like me to introduce you to? Isn't that great? Or tell me about who would you like to meet here? I'm going to look around, and if I see them, I'm going to point you out, okay? Is that fair? And you shake, and it's a great way. Or you can then also say, hey, would it make sense for us to talk later on the phone or get together for coffee or beer or Zoom or something like that, okay? Everybody got that? Say yes. All right, now, this is, we talked about earlier. I shared with you what my grandmother said. It's not what you do, but what you don't do that you regret. So practicing these things. Now, I did get some questions. We have a few minutes here. One of the questions was, if I see two people standing together, should I walk up to them and join in, or should I wait for one person? What should I do? Well, the answer, and actually the person wrote it was a little silly. They wrote, or if there's one person standing by themselves, which group should I go to? If one person's standing by themselves, I think it's kind and good to walk up to them and say hi and talk to them clearly. If two people are talking, there is a slight risk that they might be talking personally. They might know each other and talking about something that's personal, which would be stupid and crazy. They really shouldn't be doing that in a networking event. They should be talking to strangers. So I quite often will walk up to two people and I'll see they both are working for the same company. I think these people are lunatics. So, but I will do that. I will politely stand at a certain distance. If I get too close, that's a little bit too weird. I will stand back a little bit to the point totally invading, and I'll watch for them including me in the conversation. If they continue both talking and don't include me, I might just walk. I'll say I'll stop back, or but quite often they will include me, and I get involved in a three-person conversation, which is helpful and good. Also, it does cause you to practice the eye contact. Now, you got to be careful. Have you ever talked to someone or been with three people where they're talking to each other, all three are talking, but then all of a sudden they're giving more eye contact to the other person, and you're just standing there like you're invisible? So it does create a potential challenge, but it's good practice in terms of being an active listener. Another question. Should I spend time talking to the event organizers and hosts? Absolutely. That was a silly question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult you. That was a good question.
And we definitely like that. If you're ever at an
Yes. Talk to the host.
we usually end up staying very late talking to whoever would like
Yes.
to talk to us.
But arriving early is good, but being respectful that the host, also asking if you can help the host. Like if they're packing up or carrying things, I've carried stuff to people's cars. I mean, being kind is a good thing, right? How close should I stand when talking? Social distancing is a big deal now. So 6 feet is the answer. But you want to be careful about being too close. If somebody steps back, that's a sign that you're a close talker, that you're being too close. Another thing that I'll share another slide here. Let's back up here. My new favorite advice. Sometimes we have that anxiety of should I say something, or who should I walk up to, or this person might be they were the speaker and I'm not. Yeah. So all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage. This was an expression from this movie. Jamie, did you see this movie? You gotta see it. It is an amazing movie. It's
I
a
have a friend
great.
who's obsessed with it.
Okay, really? You do? Okay, well, you have to introduce me to your friend. We'll both talk about that. But this movie has changed my life, okay? And I can't say that about a lot of movies, but I believe we are who we are by the books that we read, the people that we meet, the work that we do, and movies can have that effect. It's a great movie. So that's funny that you had someone that's obsessed with it as I am. All right. So please watch this movie and let me know if it resonates with you guys. How many of you have a coach or a mentor? This is I mentioned to Jamie when I first reached out to her about the Small Business Development Center. I got involved with the SBA a little over 30 years ago. And my mentor, who was a coach, an SBA SCORE member, had a bunch of people he worked with. He ended up dropping out of the program after many years, but he kept me as his only person that he coached and mentored. So every few months we'd have lunch together. He recently just turned 100 years old. I gave him a star as a gift to celebrate his birthday and helping me. So there's a star named after him. So I think that's a huge thing that can help you with your networking and mentoring. Staying in touch with people is a big deal. So you meet people at networking events, you meet people on a Zoom call. Let's say you're on a Zoom call with 10 people. It's hard to connect with people, but if someone said something good on the call, compliment them. Make a point of connecting with someone on a Zoom call afterwards to say, hey, I noticed you were on the same Zoom call. You can connect with them on LinkedIn. You can send a message. Here are some ideas how to stay in touch. Now, since it's hard for you guys to talk since you're muted, I'm going to ask Jamie on my list here, which one or two of these seems a little weird? Like some of these are normal ways to stay in touch with people, like going to networking events together. Pick out one or two that look weird.
I don't know about funerals, Rick.
Yeah, funerals is a little weird. So Rudy Giuliani said in his book on leadership that if you're invited to a wedding, yeah, you should go. If you're invited to a party or whatever. But if someone you know has a family member that passes away, it's good to go to the funeral. So if you're in doubt about going to funerals, go to the funeral. People remember that forever. It's a good relationship building thing. It's a good way of showing respect. And also it's a good time to reflect. Okay, pick out another one that's weird.
Pie.
Okay, pie. I love food. So I have the recipe of the award-winning best apple pie in the United States of a ABC, Good Morning America did a contest a few years ago. I have the recipe for that pie, the award-winning pie. So if it's close to Thanksgiving or it's close to any other holiday, I ask people, are they, making dinner, going, someone else's house? We talk about that. And if they say they're making dinner, I say, do you like apple pie? I say to them. And they say yes. So I say, would you like an amazing apple pie recipe that won the national award for best apple pie? And they usually will say yes. I don't just say, can I send it to you? I wait for them to say yes. So then I email them this. Now, this is important for two reasons. One, how we do little things is indicative of how we do big things or other things or everything. So if I then send them that, they say, oh, Rick followed up. It gives them a good, a little feel good, okay, that I'm responsible. Secondly, let's say they print it out and take it home, which people have done, and it's on their counter or they make it. What does that do for top of mind? By the way, the recipe is on my letterhead. So when they print it out, it has my information. So let's say they make this apple pie and it's amazing. What does that do to our relationship? It moves it a little bit. It doesn't make me their supplier of the year, but it does help in terms of it's something that I can do without throwing up on them that I'm trying to sell them something. Pick out another strange one.
Now they all just make sense to me.
Thank you. Okay. So these are easy. I have a guacamole recipe, same thing. I have a secret guacamole recipe from Whole Foods that's really amazing. All right. So
do you have time for an audience question that came in the Q&A?
Yes.
So I want to be respectful of your time.
Yes.
But this is a really good one.
Okay,
Is there a guideline on how long to keep the conversations going if it's going well without taking up too much of the other person's time and risking being that person? Right?
Okay. Well, that's a great question. If you ask up front, how are you for time? Like, let's say and I'm glad you brought this up. You see on the screen, I have a you can book me. I will call someone on the phone and just start talking. I'll schedule a phone call or I'll send them a text saying, what's a good time that today or tomorrow that we can talk for a few minutes? So I will schedule it and I'll put it on my calendar. I schedule phone calls. And then I ideally will do them as Zoom calls so I can practice doing Zoom. Does that make sense? So you know up front that you have 20 or 30 minutes. Now, somebody that's a stranger might not, if I said to you, Jamie, how are you for time? Are you okay for around 20 minutes? And you might give me a face, well, I'll give you 10. Like if you think I'm trying to sell you something, that's different. But being respectful, you can ask up front, hey, how are you today? Are we going to do this? Is this a 15-minute phone call, 10-minute? You can judge. Or
what about during an event though? Like
during an event, you can say to them, hey, this is really going, Jamie, I'd love to continue this conversation with you. Do you think we should talk now, or would it make more sense for us to schedule a time later? Do you have your calendar with you? Why don't we do that? Because when you're at an event, even if you're having this great conversation with Jamie, you really should not tie up each other. If you know that you really truly will connect together later, it's probably good to schedule a separate time where you can spend more time together, where you're not risking not meeting other people. But you don't want to be that person looking over Jamie's shoulder. Let me see who else I can meet. Oh, I see somebody else there. Jamie, let me end now because I'd rather meet them. You don't want to be that person either. So it's a balance, but I would absolutely say if it's going well and you exchange cards, you can say, hey, how about we get together at Whole Foods or we get together online with Zoom? Does that make sense? And now you do risk that you may never talk again, that one of you might, or both of you could lose the card. Now, let's say they don't have a card. I will pick up my phone and take a picture and say, okay, I put it on video. Remember to call Jamie. I met at Jamie, what is your phone number? What's your email? And you'll say it. So I save it and I remember I'm more likely to follow up because I know we all have gotten business cards at events and you say a month later, should I call this person? I forget why I'm supposed to. I feel weird. So write notes on it so you're more likely to follow up because it's bad not to follow up is silly.
Right. And you can always circle back to them towards the end of the event too.
Yes.
After you do your main call. That's
beautiful. Or you could say, hey, how about, this thing ends at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Do you want to grab coffee afterwards? I mean, that's brilliant.
That's good.
Great question. I'm glad you
Rick, and I know that
I have a hard stop.
I know that you have a hard stop. I actually am going to add a few things about Zoom specific if people want to stay on. But thank you so much, Rick. We're getting a lot of good comments in the chat. People are really appreciative of this presentation. And the SBDC is as well. I'm so glad we were able to do this virtually.
Yeah, Jamie, thank you so much for the invite, and please share with me, ask the people also what their one takeaway was. If you could collect those, I'd love to hear.
We can do that.
As well as questions that we didn't answer today. I'd be happy to respond later, as well as send a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, I can do that. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks a lot,
everyone. Be strong.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
So did you hear that, everyone? If you want to put your one takeaway in the chat, I can actually save the chat and send that to him later. What I have already put in the chat, if you've been following along, I put that list of the 66, what was it? It was the Mackay 66. I put that in the chat box. Somebody else had sent me the link to the Amy Cuddy, her TED Talk, so that's in the chat box. I've also put a link to our resource page, that's in the chat box. And then the last thing I posted was our 4-question survey. So that's in the chat box. And then, so I just wanted to mention, I've been doing a lot of Zoom calls over the past few months. As you can see, I do have a virtual background, so I wanted to make sure that you knew how to do that, which is in your video feature. You can put, I think it's nice to have a background, depending on your working environment. You can put your logo behind it. You want to make sure that you test out the lighting. I would also recommend getting to know the hosting tool before the network event. So whether it's Zoom or another one, just play around with it so you're comfortable. I think that is a little helpful thing so you feel comfortable navigating. Another feature, this is that my friends recently did not know about, but if you would like to filter your face on Zoom, that is an option. If you haven't been sleeping well, you know, your kids are getting antsy, got bags under your eyes, there is a filter your face feature that Zoom so nicely offers. So you can take advantage of that if you like. So I just wanted to add, those few things. Let's see. Okay, people are putting some comments. That's great. Yes, thank you. So thanks again for tuning in today. We lead virtual sessions fairly often. If anybody had joined us in May, we were doing some meditation sessions for entrepreneurs as a way to help with some clearing of the head. This is a stressful time and we recognize that. So we are actually going to continue and do that on a monthly basis. So the next one will be next Wednesday. We'll do it the 3rd Wednesday of the month. So those are all find on our resource page. So thank you again. Post any comments or takeaways in the chat box and I'll send that over to Rick. I really enjoyed his presentation, some really good tips there. If you have any questions at all about the SBDC, you can reach out to me. Otherwise, we will end for today. I'll just leave it open for a minute if there are any last questions. Thanks for posting those. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the comments. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.